Here's the first simple truth. No matter what you went to school for, you're never going to be prepared for the first of many jobs along your career path. And it usually isn't until that first task is handed to you when you start wishing that your education was focused more on practical foundations and less on complex theory. At least it's how I felt.
I don't understand a word you're saying.
One of the building blocks of working with any kind of data, no matter the industry, is the ability to clean your data. And if you don't have the experience yet, it can feel overwhelming. Here's another simple truth. Data is messy. Sometimes you'll get lucky and just need to reformat a few columns. Other times it'll feel like you're completely reconstructing a file from scratch. But no matter what shape your data is in, there are always checks and balances for you to manage. Today I'm going to show you some simple yet necessary steps you can use to create your own strategic checklist to follow when a raw, messy dataset lands in your inbox.
You've got mail.
Now, there's no right or wrong way to data cleanse a file. There are many methods you can use involving other tools such as Power Query, which can speed up the process. But for those of you not ready to take that leap yet, in this video I'll only be using the bare bones tools that Excel has to offer. So let's get our hands dirty and clean some data. Here's our sample of uncleaned, messy data in Excel. Right off the bat, we can see varying formats, missing data, possible duplicate entries, and just some all-around inconsistencies. The first thing you want to do is create a backup of the file. You don't want to make any permanent changes with unfamiliar data without a net to fall back on. I've already done this, but all you have to do is save a copy somewhere on your computer. With the copy saved, I like to begin checking for any duplicate entries. If you'd like to review the duplicates first, I'd recommend using conditional formatting to highlight them rather than deleting. You can do this by pressing Ctrl-A to select your worksheet, and under the Home tab, choose Conditional Formatting, highlight cell rules, and duplicate values. See how we have two entries that are highlighted red across the entire row? Excel is telling you that every value in that entry is a duplicate. The other rows where only one or two cells are identified aren't truly duplicate entries. They simply have the same value as another cell somewhere in the data. For our purposes, we don't need to investigate duplicates, so let's get rid of them. The easiest way to delete a duplicate and leave only one unique entry is to select the Remove Duplicates tool under the Data tab. Check or uncheck the box for headers, depending on the data range you've selected, and make sure all the column boxes are checked before hitting OK. Now our duplicate row has been deleted. Next up, let's clean our formatting by first removing any formats to set a baseline. To remove all formats in your data, you can use the keyboard shortcut Alt-H-E-F, or simply navigate to the Home tab and select Clear and Clear Formats under the Editing section. See how the conditional formatting disappeared and our dates and numeric values adjusted? While the quantities have normalized, we now have a messy range of numbers for our purchase dates. These are sequential serial numbers that Excel uses to count the number of days since January 1st, 1900. But that's not helpful to us. The easiest way to change our date formats to something useful and uniform is to select the date cells and use the Format drop-down under the Home tab, or press Ctrl-1 to bring up the Format window. Go down to the date formats in the new window and choose the option you want. But we have a problem. One of our dates clearly isn't correct. If we go back a step, you'll see that the date entered has no delimiters such as hyphens or slashes. While we might know it's a date, Excel just sees it as a 7-digit number. So go ahead and enter a more appropriate value and then reformat all the cells. Perfect. Before moving on, I'll format my pricing to be more uniform. First, highlight the cells and use the Format shortcut again. Change to currency, accounting, or whatever you want. I'll choose number with 2 decimal places and hit OK. The next thing I like to do when cleaning data in Excel is remove any extra spaces hidden in our cells. Sometimes these spaces are easy to spot when the beginning of your value is indented. Other times those extra spaces, like those after a value, aren't as easy to catch at first glance. To delete those extra spaces, we're going to use the trim function, which removes all spaces except for a single space between values of a cell. Unfortunately, this only works one cell at a time. There are other ways to tackle this, like using an Excel add-in, but let's show you how to use trim for our purposes. We know our dates and numeric values are fine thanks to our previous formatting. So we'll focus on the columns and character inputs. Choose a cell underneath the column of data we want to change. Enter the formula equals trim and select the first cell in that area. Close the parentheses and hit enter. Now place your cursor in the bottom right-hand corner of the original cell and drag the formula down to populate each row in its new format. Next, press Ctrl-C to copy the new cells. Go up and select B2 so we can overwrite the old data. Since we copied a formula, we must paste our copy as values or we'll get an error. To do this, press Alt-H-V-V. You might be wondering why we didn't drag over our formula to the other columns and save time. Well, I usually don't like to manipulate identifier data too much. Things like ID numbers or part numbers in this case can cause havoc for an organization if you alter it incorrectly. But I do want to modify our trim formula for the other columns so we can take the next step. If you look at the item descriptions, attendant names, and other untouched values, the case sensitivity is all over the place. By adding the proper function to our trim, we can tackle two tasks at once. So in cell F9, repeat the trim function as before, but this time, add the proper function, including the additional parentheses. Now drag the formula over to the last column and then re-drag it down to populate the remaining cells. And again, overwrite the above data by copying your cell selected with Ctrl-C and paste above with Alt-H-V-V. We no longer need our formulas, so you can delete these rows below or simply clear their contents. Looking much better now, but let's do one final quick check before we start really changing the data around. Under the Review tab on your ribbon, select the spell check icon. Now, unfortunately, with things like company names, we could get some false hits, so use your discretion. However, this second find seems like it's misspelled. This should actually say supply, so I'm going to change it. Here's another one. Thanks to our proper formula, LLC was changed to lowercase. Luckily, our spell check caught it, so we can fix the misstep. Here's North Carolina, another good catch. And we're all good. Okay, now we can start removing some of the obvious inconsistencies from our data by utilizing the Find and Replace tool under the Home tab. Select Find and Select and choose the Replace option to open the search window. You could also just hit the Ctrl-F shortcut. First, what are we looking for? I see some quotations that don't belong. I see asterisks to get rid of. I also see several instances of text like street and ST, or NC versus North Carolina. For an example, let's look for any quotations in our data by entering a single quotation in the Find field. We'll leave the Replace field blank because we don't want anything taking its place. Finally, select Replace All. Let's keep going, starting with the asterisk. Now to remove the asterisk, we can't simply type it in by itself to find because Excel views asterisks as a wildcard. In doing so, we'll replace everything, like this. Instead, place the tilde in front of it to let Excel know this isn't a wildcard. Something else to watch out for is changing our NC to North Carolina. If you just enter NC as the lookup, it'll also replace the NC found in the manufacturer cell. To change only the correct entries, you have to specify a bit more. You can either add an extra space before the NC like it is in the location field, or you can use a capital N and check the box for match case. This should limit any unforeseen errors. I'll do the rest now and spare you the process. Alright, all caught up. You can see that I adjusted the structure of some locations to have them match and include commas where needed. I also cleaned up the manufacturer names and item descriptions. You could go a little further and replace any blank values to display some kind of text, but I won't for this specific data. There is one last step I'd recommend taking in the data cleaning process. In a situation like our location list, I think it better serves those looking at the final data if we split those cells up. This is easily done by selecting the data and finding the Text to Columns tool under the Data tab. When the wizard opens, keep the option for delimited checked and click Next. The next screen asks what your delimiter is, and in our case, it's a comma. Hit Next, and I'll keep the data format as general, but you may need to adjust this depending on the data being moved. Finally, hit Finish. From here, just give your new columns a header name. The only problem here is our city and state have an extra space in front. You could use the trim function to remove those like we did before. Other alternatives are using Power Query or even a simple formula like text split, which is a dynamic array, so you'll need Microsoft 365 to make it work. To use a dynamic formula like text split, simply enter the formula in the next cell, referencing the range, and then add your column delimiter of comma and space in between quotes. Lastly, copy the array and paste as values. Then you can delete the original column and add headers to the new. We covered a lot with such a small set of data, and the larger the file, the messier it can be. Now, you certainly don't have to use every trick I showed you, but I'd recommend getting comfortable with one or two of them before you start adding to your data cleansing toolbox. And if you've got any recommendations that you think would help build a solid data cleaning strategy, list them in the comments. I definitely didn't go over all of them, but if you're like me, you love learning new tricks.